Time once again for the Radio Chatter podcast. Thank you guys so much for downloading it. Today, we talked to a guy who goes by many names. The Lionheart, Mongoose McQueen, Y2J, but of course you know him as Chris Jericho, WWE superstar, and the lead singer and the voice of the band Fozzy, as well as podcaster and a whole bunch of other things. We talk about the upcoming Fozzy record coming out, Canadian rock and roll, albums that shaped his life, his book, which comes out at the end of August, and a ton more.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
This is Radio Chatter with WRIF's own Meltdown.
They said you want to talk to Chris Jericho. I'm like, any guy who loves hockey as much as Jericho does, yeah, I'll talk to him. Funny thing is, we didn't even talk about hockey today. Hey, it's Meltdown. Thanks so much for checking out the Radio Chatter podcast. If this is your first time listening, I do appreciate it. Check out some of the past interviews. Had James Hetfield on last week, Tom Kiefer from Cinderella, Jeff Tate from Queensryche. Tons of great episodes in the past. If you've listened before, thank you again for returning. Great conversation with Chris Jericho today. Of course, he's got his Talk Is Jericho podcast, one of the tops every single week. He does a really good job on that. I have to admit, I'm kind of a huge slappy for Jericho. I think he's hysterical. I've loved it, pretty much everything he's done, from the ring to his podcast and everything in between. So it was good to talk with him again. Had a chance to hang out with him a few times here and there, real briefly. I don't think he'd even remember half the times. I brought up the one time we were eating dinner late at night at Denny's. But anyways, got a really killer picture on my wall at home with Jericho, Sinister Gates, and myself at about 12:30 at night backstage at Rock on the Range a couple years ago, which was a lot of fun. Anyhow, I connected with Jericho. He was supposed to call. He did, right on time. And here's how the conversation went with Y2J, Chris Jericho, today on Radio Chatter. How's things, man? Okay?
Yeah, good, man. Good. Yeah, just everything's rocking.
Yeah, I guess you got a pretty busy year ahead of you. Not that you're already not busy enough, eh?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things, like when you've been working with Fozzy for as long as we have, and you have a song like Judas that comes out, and we've had successful songs in the past, but this is a legit hit song. You know, it's a number 2 on Octane. It's number in the top 20 on active rock radio for stations like yourself. You know, almost 7 million views on YouTube in just over 2.5 months. It's crazy. It's like a real whirlwind, but it's a real cool time to be in Fozzy. So yes, the long answer to your short questions is going to be a really busy next year and a half, 2 years for sure. I'm sure. Yeah,
well, you got the record coming out. You got your book coming out. We'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. And first of all, I couldn't believe, you know, I mean, I know you've done Fozzy for quite a while, but since 1999, can that be true? Is it almost 20 years, 18 years? I can't even believe that.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, our first record came out in 2000. I find, though, that if you're talking about the overall history of Fozzy, that we really started putting our nose to the grindstone and really deciding to make this as big as we could possibly make it in 2010 when our Chasing the Grail record came out.
Gotcha,
so,
yeah.
Yes, we started in 2000. It was more of a kind of a part-time thing. I think we were all kind of surprised that people were interested in it and excited by it. But it was 2010 when we really said, like, we can do something with this. This is a special group of musicians. We write great songs. There's some great showmanship involved. So, yes, technically since 2000, but I would say it was 2010 when we really kind of really started saying we need to do this at the top level. So it's been 7 records, though. We're getting ready to put the finishing touches on our 7th record. Basically, as I speak to you, I'm waiting on the mix for the last song. So yeah, it's been a long time, but you know, it's been really cool to see how the band has grown and developed over the years.
Now, you got the new the video out, Judas, like you said, and I've seen it before, and it's like that one shot thing. So how many times did you attempt this video?
Well, there's a video back from, I think, 91. It's called Garden of Eden, Guns N' Roses.
Right, sure, yeah.
The idea was, it's a one-shot, one-take, one-camera video. So I always thought that was a cool idea, and I said, well, let's update it and kind of make it a little bit darker and creepier and cooler. So it took us one take. We did that 3 times, and the video that you see right now, like I said, it's at almost 7 million views, is one take that took 8 minutes to film because we slowed the song down from half speed, and that's why it looks so jerky and crazy, because you slow it down to 8 minutes, and then you do the kind of the lip sync on it. Then you put it back on the normal speed, and it makes everything look all jumpy and weird. So it was the quickest video we've ever done, the cheapest video we've ever done, and by far the most popular and most watched video we've ever done. So you just never know, man. You just never know what's going to hit.
Well, that's for sure. And I mean, being in the wrestling business, you've probably done stuff before you thought this is going to go over, and it doesn't. And then you've done stuff probably that you thought this is going to go nowhere, and it does.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole box of shall I say, unused catchphrases that I thought were going to be huge. I remember Razzle Dazzle was one of them. Like, I was convinced, like, I'll just start saying, like, oh, Chris Jericho's the king of Razzle Dazzle, and that was going to make me $1 million. You know, T-shirts, hats, toilet paper, condoms, everything. And of course, people couldn't have cared less about it. So yeah, and I've learned one thing over the years, man, is that you can try and sit back and analyze why something works, but it's a lot better just to enjoy the ride. I wish I could tell you why certain things work and certain things don't, but after a while you realize, who really cares? Just if it's working, just sit back and enjoy it and ride the wave as long as you can, and you know, swing on that vine until the next vine comes, and then swing on that one. So because you just never ever know what's going to connect with the people and what's going to connect with your fans, and that doesn't really matter after all, as long as something does connect.
Man, I'll tell you what, truer words have never been spoken. I wrote a blog last year about the final show for the Tragically Hip. We don't play the Tragically Hip. I'm not a huge fan, but I've grown up in Buffalo and living here in Detroit. Of course, I'm well aware of them, and of course, I'm sure you're well aware of them too. And I wrote this blog about how it could be the last time this guy ever walks on stage, the whole thing. It got shared like unbelievable, and I thought it was going to lay there like a dead fish. You're right. You never know what's going to click with people, you know?
And the thing is, it's funny because I just woke up this morning, and you won't have any idea who this is, and your listeners will wonder what the hell I'm talking about, but there's a great Canadian band called Streetheart, who's probably my favorite Canadian band of all time. They were huge in Canada, and their singer, Kenny Shields, just passed away this morning, and they're like the Tragically Hip, where I have no idea why they didn't make it in the States. I have no idea why the Tragically Hip didn't make it in the States, but they didn't. For whatever reason, we can sit here and try and figure it out. The songs are there, the band was there, the playing, the looks, everything. But like I said, I'm just happy that I was able to kind of take this career both in music and in wrestling. When I was a kid, that's what I wanted to do. I have no idea how I was going to do it back then, but here I am all these years later doing both. And like I said, if I could put it in a bottle and sell it, I would, but I can't. So I'm just happy that I've been able to do it and that people still care and give a damn about what it is that I'm doing. I never take that for granted.
Well, I'll tell you what, I went home to Buffalo over the weekend, and you're talking about Canadian bands, and my dad brought all my albums up because recently I got back into vinyl, which I've talked about a lot of times. But when I was a kid growing up, I had Helix, I had Killer Dwarf albums, you know, of course the Rush records. I think I had a Coney Hatch album in there somewhere along the line. So, you know, some of those favorites from when you grew up.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's a kind of a golden era in Canadian rock and roll from about 79 to maybe 86, 87, where there was all of these great bands that, unless you grew up in Canada, you would never know. Another great, Kim Mitchell. Kim Mitchell,
sure, yeah. Growing up in Buffalo, heard of, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, legitimately 20 top 10 A-plus songs in Canada that no one knows in the States. And for whatever reason, I mean, Rush is kind of the anomaly. Everyone knows Rush. They would be the one you think no one would know. There's not a more Canadian, weird, strange band than Rush, but they struck gold. So, but there was a lot of great Canadian bands over the years that never cracked it into the States. And once again, I wish I could tell you the reasons why. It's the same way that, you know, there's guys playing in clubs that I know in their 40s and 50s that were great when they were 15 years old. Should have been the guitar player for Ozzy. Could have been the guitar player for Ozzy had he ever gotten the break. Or same with a lot of great wrestlers that never really get that shot. And I don't really know why that happens sometimes. I think, you know, a lot of it is you have to just connect with the audience and do whatever you can do to connect and get that connection and get that relationship with your fan base. And that's one thing that I've always been very lucky and very able to do well is make that connection to where no matter what it is that Jericho's doing, after I gained your trust as a performer, most of the time you'll know if I'm doing something. All the time I'm doing it for 100%, and most of the time that connects with my fan base, which is why I'm able to do so many cool things, because people trust me and give it a shot. And that's all I ask, just give it a try. And I think that's one of the reasons why Judas is so big right now, is because a lot of people are telling me, we never listened to Fozzy before, we never checked out the band, never gave it a shot. And when they finally decided to give it a shot, because for whatever reason it's the right time and right place, they heard Judas, which is probably our best song. And so it's just kind of a perfect storm of building up that trust, finally having people give the band a chance that hasn't in the past, and then hearing this great song. So Fozzy is bigger than we've ever been before, and it's just starting, so it's a really cool time, like I said.
Now, you mentioned Kim Mitchell real fast. Just want to go back to that for a second here. You know, you've met him before, right?
Yeah, once or twice. He's a DJ in Toronto. I did a couple of interviews with him.
Yeah, you know how tall he is. So I'm 5'6". He's the only artist I've ever introduced on stage where the roadies had to pull my microphone off the stage after I was done.
Yeah, they had to readjust the mic stand, right?
No, they actually put another mic up there for me.
Oh, gotcha. He's just a little guy.
All right, yeah, there you go. Hey, by the way, I'm good friends with Rhino. I've been out with you before with Rhino in the past. Of course, you know, being here in Detroit, you know, he's a Detroit icon. You know, I remember one night we were out, and I think I may have even talked to you about this before, but one night we were out, and he called me up. This is about 15 years ago, and I don't expect you to remember it, but we were at like a Denny's or something at like midnight or something like that, and you walked in looking for us with your shirt unbuttoned. Is that how you walk into restaurants all the time?
I don't know, man. I've been doing this for such a long time. Sometimes the shirt's unbuttoned, sometimes the tongue's hanging out, sometimes there's no shoes. Who knows what state I'm in? But let me tell you something, though, dude. I'll match your unbuttoned shirt and raise you one.
Okay.
I believe that's the night when some guy got down on his knees and proposed to his girlfriend in Denny's, and she was like, "Don't do it. Please don't do it. Please don't do it." And he got down on his knees and proposed to her, and it did not end well. And I'm not sure if that was the same night, if you were there, but it did happen in Detroit, and Rhino was there. So I'm just going to say it was the same night.
It could have been. It's possible. I know Edge and Christian were there. Lance Storm was there. I think Shane Helms was there. I think so. It's possible. I don't know. I've had a lot of whiskey since that day, so who knows?
The difference is they all went to bed, and I went to the landing strip afterwards. So there you go.
There you go. Hey, I got to tell you, man. You know, you're just talking about how you've been able to connect with your fans and all this stuff, and I mean, kudos to you. You've done some really cool stuff, and I have to admit, I'm a big fan of your podcast. I think you do a really good job. Like, I started listening to it, and I was kind of shocked, being in this business for almost 30 years now, how good it is. It's really good, actually. And I got one complaint, though. You always use the word especially, and it's especially.
I know. You got to remember, I'm from Winnipeg, Canada, man. I'm actually calling you from the prairies right now, Yorkton, Saskatchewan, getting ready for my cousin's wedding. So we have a different way of pronouncing things. I always get in trouble with that, especially. Sorry, guys. If that's the worst thing you can find about the things that I do, I apologize.
No, man, I think it's great, man. You know, I gotta be honest. I didn't think you were such a music fan, but you're a huge music fan, and you know a lot about it, and it's kind of impressive, actually.
I've always been way more of I used to call myself a rock. In high school, they used to call me a rockologist, and they used to call me Mr. Metal, because I knew everything about every little detail and every little trivia bit and all the minutia, and I've always been that way. I don't know. You know, they think, oh, Jericho's one of the biggest wrestlers or whatever. I know nothing about wrestling history, really. I mean, I know the stuff that I saw and that I watched, but as far as like the minutia of who won this and what happened there, don't know. But I can go talk rock and roll about 90% of any band that has ever been out there for hours, because it's just my thing. I just love music. I love the history of music, the stories behind it. That's one of the reasons why I love doing my podcast. Yes, I love having some of these bands on, or I had a guy on a couple months ago who was talking about the legend of Paul is Dead, all the clues of Paul McCartney supposedly died in 1967, and all the legendary, if you start Dark Side of the Moon and Wizard of Oz at the same time, they completely sync up. Like, I love stuff like that. So yeah, it is fun doing Talk is Jericho, because yes, there's some wrestling guests, but a lot of music, a lot of paranormal, comedians, porn stars, sports guys, my family. I got a great podcast up this week called The Childhood of Jericho, talking with my two cousins about all the crazy stuff we used to do when we were kids. And it's like, you're thinking, well, who would listen to this? But once again, people trust my judgment. And if I have somebody on my show, it always does a huge number because there's people will listen to it no matter who's on the show, and that's the idea. Like I love watching the Tonight Show because I love Jimmy Fallon. I don't know who the guest is going to be. I don't care. I just know because it's Jimmy, I'm going to like it, and that's what I wanted to do with Talk to Jericho. Yes, sometimes I'll have Hulk Hogan or Paul Stanley or the biggest of the big, but other times I'll have kind of a little more obscure guests that I find very interesting, and people still check it out and listen to it. And that's a good, like I said, that's a good relationship to have with my fan base, with all the friends of Jericho, shall we say. Yeah, dude, you do a really good job. I mean, I've done interviews for a lot of years, and stuff, and, it sounds like you're prepared. It sounds like you do a killer job, and you got some funny stories. I listened to the Corey Taylor one recently. He's great. I mean, how easy is Corey to talk to? He's one of the easiest, By far one of the easiest. But here's something that's really cool that you just said. I don't prepare. I don't ever look up anything because I find, like, let's say you and I meet each other up in a bar one night. I don't pull out a list of questions and go, okay, so tell me about your childhood. It's just, it's a natural conversation that goes wherever it goes. And I think that's another one of the reasons why people enjoy listening to Talk is Jericho. A guy like me and Corey, okay, he's got a new album coming out. Okay, press start. Hour later, we're finished. And could go for another 3 hours. I mean, that's the secret to it because it's not an interview, it's a conversation, and there is a difference. And I'm sure you know this, man, from all the people you talk to. Some guys you think are going to be the best interviews in the world. They're not. Super quiet. They don't tell the stories that you want them to tell. Other guys, you just say, like maybe like me, you're probably thinking this guy should shut up or you just say, hey, it's Chris Jericho, and then an hour later we're done. So there's different types of different types of people that you're going to talk to, but as an interviewer, it's always a good kind of exercise, shall I say, on the spot job exercise to be able to have a great interview with any type of guest. Because like I said, some are loud and crazy, some are very quiet, and you really got to pull teeth to get something. But when you can figure out how to crack those type of guys too, that makes you a better interview, which always means you're going to have a good show. Well, I'll tell you what, you talk to Maynard from Tool, you better be prepared for something. I don't know if you ever talked to him, but he's kind of tough. He's been one of my tougher ones. But yeah, I mean, Kerry King from Slayer's like that, and Kerry's a good friend of mine, but Kerry will answer your question very succinctly, and he'll answer exactly what you ask, and then he'll stop. Right. And then you got to go, all right, so what about this one? I've done that. Yeah, it's funny you should mention that because I host Kevin Harvick's, thing every time he comes to Michigan here, and I've been doing this for like 7 years, so I kind of know him pretty well. But he will answer his question, and he will like do this thing with his lips or whatever, and then look at you like, okay, what's next? And so you better be prepared with something else. But right, yeah, exactly, and that's why you have to listen as the interviewer. You have to pay attention. Like I do a lot of interviews, obviously, and whenever someone comes in, maybe they don't have as much experience or whatever, they pull out the list of questions. I know it's not going to be good because you're too, and I can even see it, you're too busy thinking about the next question than listening to what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is probably 1,000 times more interesting than your next question, but you don't have the experience to do that. So interviewing is not asking, it's listening. Right. That's pretty good. I'm going to use that. Interviewing is not asking, it's listening. That's no, you're 100% correct. I've heard podcasts, and I'm not going to name any of them recently, where the interviewer, or the host or whatever you want to call it, sounds like the guy from Wayne's World 2. Remember when Harry Shearer had Wayne Garth in the studio? That's what he sounds like. I'm like, why doesn't he let those guys talk? He just keeps interrupting them all the time. He just moves on. So that's totally true, man. But like I said, there's so many podcasts, and everyone thinks it's so easy, and it's not. There's a real art form to it. So when you find one that you really like, stick with it. Because you're probably, like I said, it's not the easiest form of media, but it's a lot of fun when you can figure out how to do it. Yeah. Now, you were talking about your history and stuff, growing up being the metal guy and stuff. So Rolling Stone recently has been doing this thing with, your top 10 metal albums. You don't have to go through all 10, but what are some of the metal albums or rock albums that, kind of shaped you growing up? Well, I always got to go to kind of the mystical three, Kiss Alive, Master Puppets, Power Slave, Iron Maiden. Those are three great ones. I'm trying to just think of, I love the White Album by the Beatles. I love Sticky Fingers by the Stones, Synchronicity by the Police, Rust in Peace, Megadeth. Just kind of going through the list of my favorite bands, and Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman from Ozzy, tremendous records. So Obviously, you have to throw Back in Black in there, but I would probably go more with High Voltage because I'm a little bit more of a Bon Scott guy. But, there's so many bands that kind of shaped me and influenced me, and not all of them are necessarily metal. Like I said, I'm a huge Stones fan, huge Police fan, love the Beatles, but nothing's better than listening to some of those old Iron Maiden records. And some of the new bands I love, I think City of Evil, Avenged Sevenfold is pretty close to a perfect record. I love, Eat 'Em and Smile by David Lee Roth, Fair Warning by Van Halen, a lot of great tunes from that era as well. So I don't know how many I just gave you, but that's kind of a little bit of a cross-section.
Well, you're talking about the Beatles, and you talked about John a little while ago, and have you heard the new Sgt. Pepper remix?
Yeah, I have, absolutely.
How's it sound?
It sounds ridiculous because not to get too audiophile on you, but when they did that record, they had to take basically a 4-track mixing machine and split it into 32 tracks.
Yeah, I saw the whole thing on PBS. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. They put 4 tracks under 4 tracks and 4 tracks, but now what they're able to do with modern technology is separate every track. So you're hearing the entire mix with like 32 tracks rather than 4 split into 4 and split into 4 and split into 4. So it's this musical landscape that it's almost like watching Wizard of Oz, where it starts out in black and white and then gets to color.
Yeah.
The Sgt. Pepper 50 is almost like the color version of Sgt. Pepper. So if you are a Beatles fan, you'll know what I'm talking about once you put it on. It really comes alive. Yeah, I can't wait to listen to that. But man, I'll tell you, I ordered my copy, and I got to get it at home and on the vinyl copy of it. So yeah. Hey, couple more things here for you, Chris, before we cut you loose. I know you get your time and your stuff. First of all, you're hosting the Loudwire Awards this coming fall. Is that true? Absolutely. Yeah, excited about it, man. That's going to be pretty cool. So, who are you looking forward to seeing? Who haven't you met that you might see that night? It's funny because we were doing that show a few years ago. It was called the Golden Gods Awards through kind of Revolver magazine, and that fell apart. So it's me and the same guy, Josh Bernstein, producing it. And who haven't I met? Dude, in this world at this level, not too many people that I haven't met over the years. So I'm just excited to be a part of it and be there, because I think that, once again, heavy metal is still always, and hard rock is still always kind of the bastard child in the music business. I don't think it's ever really been huge. I think once in a while you'll get a band like Metallica or Guns N' Roses that breaks through. But other than that, Maiden. But other than that, it's still kind of an underground secret society of really good friends. If you're a metal fan, you're instantly kind of a friend. So just the whole vibe of it, the whole concept of it is great. And it really is like going to like a cool summer camp where you see all your old friends and you're all hanging out. I know Rob Halford's going to get a Lifetime Achievement. He's a great guy. Awesome guy. Had a great guy. I had the pleasure of interviewing Tony Iommi last year. He's getting kind of a Lifetime Achievement thing. Another perfect, awesome, cool gentleman. Yeah. I think Ozzy's going to be there. I think Ozzy's still the guy that I've been trying to get on Talk Is Jericho, and I haven't been able to. And he's kind of one of my, your bucket list guys. Yeah. Yeah, so maybe, I know he's going to be there, but Ozzy will show up 5 minutes before and leave 5 minutes later. He's one of those type of guys. So my best bet is to track down Sharon, because last time I saw her, she was flirting with me big time. So, maybe if I have to do the old quid pro quo, maybe if I have to give her a little loving to get Ozzy on the show, what the hell, I'd do it. Might as well, right? Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned, Metallica and Guns N' Roses being the biggest bands, because did you see the tour in 1992 when they played together? I never did. I wasn't at any town where they were playing at. But, yeah, it's funny because once I saw that Guns N' Roses did stadiums last year, I knew Lars would be going, okay, we're doing stadiums next year. No, we're not. You know what I mean? Well, Guns N' Roses opened their stadium tour here in Detroit, and then Metallica just played here last week. And I got to be honest, man, I said to James, I was doing an interview with James for my podcast. I said, hey, listen, I can't believe that in 2017, the biggest bands in the world are still the biggest bands in the world that were in 1992. Oh, it's a true story. And the fact you got James on your podcast, jealous. Yeah, I know. It was jealous. James is awesome to talk to. Yeah, but it's like that tour, that whole thing was, awesome. I actually asked James if he would ever do that again, and he kind of said, yeah, we already did that. Of course, he's not going to say he wants to do that again, but anyhow. Well, I do remember when they were Year in Life of Metallica, and they were calling him Axl Pose. So I think that probably tells you all you need to know about that.
Hey, just a few more things here. I know I'm taking up too much of your time. Sorry about that. Chris Cornell, of course, passed away here in Detroit, and then Chester Bennington just the other day. Tell me your thoughts about those guys.
Well, I didn't really have much of a connection to Chester. I never met him, and I wasn't a Linkin Park fan. No reason other than it just wasn't my vibe.
Right.
Always sad to hear one of the brothers kind of, going out that way. But I will say that, Cornell, one of my favorite singers of all time. I had the pleasure of meeting him. Actually, I saw him, I think, 2 days before he passed away at a festival in northern Minnesota or southern Minnesota, wherever the hell it was, Minnesota somewhere. But I will say this. It really makes me mad when I read people going, the way that he took himself out was disgusting and this, that, and the other thing. It's like I've known two people now who have had, suicides that had this immense depression. And I really find that that's a disease, just like cancer or a heart attack would be. And when you're saying to somebody like, oh, yeah, he killed himself, I think you should use it in the same mindset and vibe as if you said he died of cancer.
Yeah.
I don't think it's something you can really help doing. And it's like, he's Chester had 6 kids. How can he do this? What a coward. I think he had about as much choice as you or I would have if we dropped dead of a heart attack right now. So that's the way I feel about it. And I never met Chester. I'm not a Linkin Park fan, no disrespect, but anytime somebody's in this business and that happens to you, I feel for them, because I'll tell you this, to be in show business and to be always have to be in front of a crowd and always have to be on, so to speak, when you go downstairs to have breakfast or have a coffee, it's not easy.
Right.
And I can see a lot of people kind of having issues with that. Maybe they're private people. Maybe, I don't know. We don't know what happened in his mind, but I just want to say that anybody out there, if you're feeling that, please reach out. And anybody who's judging, don't, because I really find that depression is a true disease, a mental disease that's just as serious as a physical disease can be.
Now, you're coming through the Motor City on the 29th of September with Rob Zombie and Pop Evil, Hailstorm, Five Finger, Greta Van Fleet. This is going to be awesome for RIFF Fest, and we're really looking forward, and we're grateful to have you here.
What a lineup. Yeah, it's funny because as soon as we were told about that festival, it's like, well, we'll be there. And then there's a little bit of like not controversy, but it's like, well, where are we going to be on tour at the time? And what's this going to happen? What's this logistic? And what's this bean counting? I was like, I don't give a damn. We're going to be there. So I'm going, and the band will be there. So you guys figure it out. It's the classic, like Detroit it's a great rock and roll town. It's a great Fozzy town. It's a great Chris Jericho town. It's Detroit Rock City, man. I mean, there's no doubt about that. That's not just a tune by Kiss. It's the truth. So anytime we can play in Detroit, it's an honor. It's always a great show. I think the last time we played there was a few years ago. I can't remember what the name of the amphitheater is. Energy Amphitheater.
Oh, yeah, DT. That's where you'll be back.
DT?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. So maybe that's why I suddenly remembered it. But I'm really excited about it, and I got a lot of great friends in Detroit, and a lot of friends of Fozzy, and like I said, especially now with Judas being kind of as big as it is and continuing to grow, there's a whole new audience for Fozzy, and we're really excited to be there and meet all of our new fans and rock all of our old fans who know what to expect, which is a great rock and roll show, man. We're Van Halen in 1979. That's us. It's all about the vibe. It's all about having a great time. It's all about rock, and that's what Detroit's all about as well.
So you're coming through town in the fall. Your book is going to be coming out. When is your book coming out? The end of August?
Yeah, it's one of those weird things. It's like the book comes out August 29th, and I think our record is coming out September 29th. So
okay.
It's one of those things where it's like I have a book and a record coming out within a month of each other. So, but once again, it's my 4th book. This one's a little bit more of a kind of a motivational self-help book, because I got asked so many times, how did you get into rock and roll and wrestling? How did you do both? How can you do both? How did you make those happen? And I thought it might be interesting to kind of address that. So I went through kind of 20 lessons that I've learned over the years, 20 principles from a myriad of people, from Keith Richards to Paul Stanley to Gene Simmons to my father to people that you've never heard of before. Just little lessons that I learned to make both of these dreams come true, and how you can do it as well if you have dreams that some people might think are incredibly impossible. And I learned that the only person that can stop you from doing something is yourself. And once you realize that, you can pretty much accomplish whatever it is that you want to do. So it's a fun book. I'm excited for people to read it, and still got a lot of ridiculous stories and self-deprecating humor that I'm known for, but it's a little more of it's the after-school special of Jericho books at this point in time. You actually learn something from it.
Well, I'm looking forward to checking it out. Like I tell my kids all the time, it's only impossible until you've done it.
There you go.
Right.
Exactly. The only people that tell you can't do something are the ones that have failed at their own dreams.
Right.
So
all right.
If you have something you want to do, you can do it.
Final thing for you. Are you going to be returning to the ring in the fall? That's what everyone wants to know.
Yeah, no plans for that right now. I mean, you can't do both at the same time, and this is Fozzy time now. We've been working a long time on this record. It's going to be coming out in September, like I said, at the end of September. And once that happens, there was actually a debate in the record company whether Judas should be the first single months ago when we were talking about, because there's like 3 or 4 other songs that are just as good as Judas, if not better. So if you like that song, you're going to love the record. And I think that Fozzy's just going to continue to grow. So WWE isn't going anywhere, but Fozzy's pretty much the focus for now, and has been since 2010. Like I said, I go back to the WWE in between Fozzy tour cycles, but other than that, it's Fozzy.
There you go. Well, listen, man, I've told you this before in person, but I love your stuff. You're entertaining. You do a great job, and actually all the facets of what you're doing here, and continued success. And we'll see you here in Detroit coming up at the end of September, brother.
We're excited, man. Looking forward to returning to Detroit Rock City. It's one of my favorite cities to play in, one of my favorite cities to perform in, and we're excited to see all of our great friends, including yourself, all the fine people like you.
Yes, the end of September at DT Energy Music Theater right here in the Motor City, in the suburbs, actually. Anywhere in Southeast Michigan, Southern Ontario, and make the trek in, by all means. Like I said, Rob Zombie, Five Finger Death Punch, Hailstorm, Pop Evil, Greta Van Fleet, the band Radkey, as well as Fozzy. So we got a pretty good lineup, and I think there still might be a couple little bands out there we're just trying to sew up on. So anyways, check the website, WRIF.com, and the upcoming days as far as RIFF Fest is concerned. And thank you guys so much for checking out Radio Chatter. Got a couple good ones on tap for you. Some legendary performers coming up as far as the Radio Chatter podcast is concerned. Even another WWE superstar coming up next week, too. So by all means, star this. Give me a rating, a review, whatever you got to do. Share it with your friends. And as always, I constantly say this, but I do mean it. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Radio Chatter podcast.